I think for the short term in commercial real estate, things are going to be at a standstill for the foreseeable future. It's going to be really tough for uh, sellers and buyers to come to terms on price right now. Sellers are looking at the price of yesterday when we were at the top of the market. It was the highest prices people have seen in 10 years. And buyers, they're looking forward and saying, what's the future going to hold? Is my business even going to be around in a year? I think most small business owners are just trying to make it to tomorrow. Frankly, they're pinching every penny they can have. So unless you're growing like a weed, you're one of the few businesses that are benefiting from COVID-19. Believe it or not, there are some businesses out there that are benefiting from this. Like if you're in medical device manufacturing, as an example, you manufacture parts for ventilators or you manufacture masks, you're in a pretty good spot right now. Or if you're in distribution, you're in a pretty good spot right now. However, for the vast majority of folks, they're looking just to see, okay, what can I do to make it tomorrow? So that's what I'm seeing in commercial real estate for the time being. I think it's going to be pretty stagnant. But for small businesses who have been impacted and shut down, I definitely recommend you communicate with your landlord. So if you're a tenant leasing a building and you can't operate your business right now, communicate that with your landlord. Landlords are, the ones I work with have been very flexible with their tenants during this time. A lot of them are offering rent relief or partial rent relief, and their banks are in most cases working with them on their mortgage payments. So everyone is being pretty flexible right now, but the key is to communicate what your problems are, what your bottom line is. Don't take advantage of the situation. There's a lot of landlords that are distressed right now too. But if you know you need rent relief, succinctly show that to the landlord, how you arrived at a number of how much rent relief you need. So if it's just for the next month, you need free rent. Put a brief income and expense statement together for what you see your income being for the next month or two, what your projected expenses are. Show the landlord what you need and what you plan to use that rent relief for. That would be my biggest recommendation.
Is there any kind of small business protection? Like, are landlords obligated to be flexible to a certain extent? Is there anything that protects tenants under the law right now?
Yeah. So right now it's illegal for tenants to be evicted by their landlord.
Okay.
So from that perspective, I know that's the case for residential. It's still not 100% clear if commercial tenants can be evicted or not. I've read a couple attorneys' opinions on that, and it's not 100% clear. Most say that they are protected.
Okay.
So landlords aren't able to evict businesses right now while coronavirus is still happening. That may be uplifted in the next 3 months or so, but for the time being, tenants can't be evicted.
Okay. What is, from an industry perspective, what's kind of the buzz that's happening around commercial real estate on the inside of the industry that you would feel comfortable sharing?
Sure. Well, I know for me personally, and for a lot of the other agents I work with, we're really just trying to be a resource for businesses right now, pointing them in the direction of the different government programs out there to help small businesses. Like I said, we expect things to be fairly stagnant for the upcoming months. So we're just trying to get the deals we have under contract across the finish line. We're really playing firefighter and nurse right now, putting out the fires and trying to keep deals alive. That's really every agent's main focus right now.
Got it. And so I'd like to know, so I have this kind of theory that, a lot of businesses, going through this, what we're going through right now, I have this theory that a lot of businesses are going to realize that like their tolerance for remote and virtual work is being increased right now, right? And
Mhm.
so we're all being reconditioned in terms of how we can be effective. And
Mhm.
so is there any talk about the fact that some businesses may decide, hey, I don't need as big of a footprint anymore, and it's okay for me to have a virtual or a partially virtual team, or whatever, and reduce my overhead significantly? Is there any kind of talk around that?
Yeah, there definitely is, especially in office right now. I mean, pretty much every business is working remotely from home, and they're having to figure it out. And
Yeah.
in most cases, businesses' real estate's one of the biggest line items on their um, profit and loss statement each year. So I do anticipate that a lot of businesses are going to be shrinking the size of their space down. And to be honest with you, we were already starting to see that trend in office. I represent a lot of office landlords throughout the Twin Cities metro, and of all the asset classes that I've seen, it seems like those are the hardest assets to lease are office buildings, because there's people are going to more of a they're shrinking the amount of space per employee that they need. They're going to more of an open, collaborative type environment where you can squeeze four people into like a workstation area versus everyone having their own individual private office. So I think we were already starting to see that trend, and this is just going to expedite that process. So if I was in a position to buy property right now, if I was investing in commercial real estate, I would personally stay away from office right now, because I foresee a lot of vacancy in office. There's going to be less demand for it, and more vacancy.
Yeah, absolutely. So that brings me to a great point. So I want to backtrack a little bit. So you focus on office and industrial spaces, right? That's your niche in
Yep.
terms of what you work with. So what do you see happening on the industrial side?
Industrial, I'm pretty bullish on industrial. I've listened to a couple economists speak on the industrial markets, manufacturing. I think COVID-19, if anything, it's opened our eyes that we need to start manufacturing products here in the US. Right now, we get a lot of our supply from all over. And when we need these ventilators, we need these masks, and we're not able to bring that into the US. That's a big problem. And I think the US will realize that we need to be less reliant on other countries to produce those types of products.
Mhm.
And in addition to that, I think we're going to see a lot more wholesale distribution. I mean, the Amazons of the world are going to continue to become more popular. People love just ordering things online. So I think there's going to be more expansion for big warehouse buildings.
Absolutely. It's interesting. I was doing some. I'm preparing a presentation right now that I'm intending to share it out virtually to an open network. And I was last night I was doing some research. I was working late doing some research, and I was on Google Trends. Do you ever look at Google Trends?
Nah, I can't say I look at it daily.
Well, it's really fascinating because you can look at topics and look and see what that topic's popularity is over time according to Google. And that's basically, it's user generated from what people are searching and stuff. So, but there's like a few things that have like really spiked, and like one of them is like do it yourself home improvement. Um, Telehealth, that search term has really spiked in the last 3 weeks. And so it's just really fascinating to look at that in comparison to what's actually happened. And when you look at like industries, and you can see like, well, like for instance, like massage took a huge nosedive. Obviously things where you have to be, you know, interacting with people directly and actually physically touching, like those things are just going to tank right now, right?
Yeah,
So I just find it really interesting to compare that in alignment with like things that people are experiencing and talking about anecdotally in their businesses. So one, you know, example, I had this theory like a few weeks ago, like for instance, a plumbing business, right? Well, if people are spending more time at home, there's certain things, like if you have home improvement projects, well, like those things they bother you. If there's something wrong, like the noisy dishwasher or you know, the leaky faucet or whatever it is, those things bother you the more time you're around them.
sure.
In addition to that, there's certain things that just can't break, right? Like you have to have plumbing, you have to have hot water, you have to have heating and air conditioning. And so there's a lot of these, I feel like what we're hearing is like, oh, like we're doomed and this is the worst thing ever. But in reality, you know, there's a lot of businesses that are just fine. If not, they're in a position to do even better, right, than they
For
were.
sure.
And when you compound that with the fact that some people are going to throw in the towel, that just means there's more to grab, right?
Yep.
If you're hanging on, you know. I'm not sure if that directly correlates. I just thought it was an interesting talking point to add to the conversation.
Yeah, no, I think they're the savvy business owners who keep their heads on straight are going to come out of this even stronger. There's going to be a lot of businesses that don't survive this, so hopefully they'll be able to pick up some of the scraps from those other businesses.
Absolutely, absolutely. You know, I I feel like, you know, it's times like this where people start to make knee-jerk decisions that aren't very well thought through. And you know, from my standpoint as a marketing consultant, you know, this is not the time to promote anything. This is really, in fact, if there's demand, this is actually an opportunity to raise prices.
Sure.
um,
Yeah, I would think your business, it's all online, so more people should be reaching out to guys like you because they need to have more of an online presence.
it's crazy, Royce. Another thing too, when in that search thing I was doing, the term online course, just the search term online course, like people are so interested in teaching themselves things, and this is where I think that presents a big opportunity for actually almost any business owner. Like, what is the knowledge that you have that you actually can sell,
Yep.
right? Like what is it, right? um because people are really interested right now in like teaching themselves. They're interested in like starting businesses at home, starting home businesses,
Hmm.
because you know they believe to a certain extent that that will macro proof them from the economy and the swings the economy takes, right?
Yep.
So anyway, that's long-winded Justin Wednesday afternoon tangents.
No, I totally see it. I get a lot of my courses through the CCIM Institute, and I've signed up for a couple of them because I've got a little bit more downtime now, and what better way to grow your business than to learn? So
Absolutely. So back to real estate, you mentioned, you know, communication with landlords is key. You also mentioned that there's a certain level of protection that tenants have right now.
mhm.
Is this a good opportunity to, or is it even in the scope for a tenant to renegotiate their terms
Yeah, definitely. I
at the
actually
table?
I actually think it's a perfect time if you really love your space and you don't plan on going anywhere, you're not severely impacted by COVID-19. Now is the perfect time to renegotiate your lease. I actually just got done negotiating a medical clinic in the Minneapolis area. We were already in the works of renegotiating an extension to her lease. She wanted a 7-year extension, and we actually, during the middle of, it was probably 2 weeks ago, we renegotiated our initial terms. We had sent the landlord a proposal, and we ended up getting like 10 months of free rent for this coming year. And in addition to that, we got about a $15,000 tenant improvement allowance. So, I mean, that's unheard of. Normally, you would get maybe 2 to 3 months of free rent if you're a solid tenant, good credit, and you've been around for a while. But in this case, we were able to negotiate a deal where her rent only escalated 1.5% annually, and she got the equivalent of about $75,000 in free rent. So
Wow.
yeah.
Wow.
So now is the perfect time if you're looking to renew your lease to do it.
Got it. And that doesn't mean you can renegotiate anything during the lease term. Like, or is that?
Well, so normally there's a clause in your lease that says you have to give the landlord 6 months notice if you're going to stay or if you're going to vacate. So if you're going to renew, generally it's 6 to 9 months. You got to let the landlord know, yep, I want to renew. And then they'll generally send you a proposal. It's usually like a 1-page amendment to your current lease, extending the termination out 3 to 5 years or whatever it is, and then they'll typically escalate the rent by 3% or something like that. So
okay, cool.
yeah.
And what would you say if let's say if you're an owner and you know what, I lived through 2008, I lived through 9/11. I'm done with this shit. So if you're an owner and you say, you know what, screw it, I'm just gonna sell my property.
Yeah.
What advice would you give to someone that was looking to sell right now?
So I would say if you're thinking about selling in the next 3 years, sooner is better than later. I think prices are going to stay pretty much the same on paper. I don't think comps are going to start to go down until another year or two. We're still going to be completing a lot of the transactions we had under contract before COVID-19. The thing about commercial real estate is a cycle or the timeline to purchase a building is about 6 to 9 months. So we're not going to see comps go down for another 6 to 9 months. So I think the prices now are going to be as high as they're going to be for the next 5 years. I think in another year or two, we're really going to start to see prices go down. If you look at the last cycle in 2007, 2008, it took about 2 years for the prices to bottom out in industrial real estate. So looking at this graph right now, in 2007, that was equivalent of 2019. We were at the top of the market. Prices of industrial real estate throughout the Twin Cities metro in the 20 to 100,000 square foot range were on average about $53 a square foot. That price actually went up in 2008 to $55 a square foot. The bottom dropped out in about June of 2008. And we didn't see prices drop until 2009, 2010. And if you look at the number, so in 2009, that average price per square foot went from 55 in 2008 down to $44 a square foot. And then in 2010, it bottomed out at $42 a square foot. And it's also interesting to look at the number of transactions between 2007 and 2009. The number of transactions went from 85 in the metro in 2007 all the way down to 28 in 2009. So if we follow that cycle, if it's similar to 2008, 2009, 2010, this year the prices will remain pretty much the same. but we're going to see a huge drop in the number of transactions next year. And I think we'll see a big drop in pricing as well.
What is the main, like, so, because I just think that's really interesting where pricing drops at the same time transactions drop, but is that a result of does it become a self-fulfilling prophecy where like demand declines because owners aren't willing to sell in this market?
Yep.
Like, does that make sense? Do you see where I'm going? Like what starts at that and what ends it? You know what I mean?
Yeah, so I think what happens with demand is, like I said, I think all the transactions we have under contract now, most of those will get through to the finish line. So that will keep the number of transactions high for this year. But for putting properties under contract from here to the end of the year, which will likely close in 2021, there's going to be a lot less properties going under contract because buyers don't want to buy right now. They're looking for price reductions, but sellers are looking at what prices we're at yesterday. They're not going to come to terms for a while. I think what's going to ultimately force sellers to sell is there's going to be vacancies in their properties, and they're going to need the capital to they're going to have a lot of holding costs in the interim for the next year, and they're going to be using their own cash out of pocket to hold themselves over, but they only can do that for so long. I think a year from now they're going to have a lot of vacancy. They're not going to be able to keep their properties full. They're going to have a mortgage when they purchased a property at the peak of the market, and they're not going to be able to meet all their operating expenses and payments. So they're going to be forced to sell these properties at a discounted price.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's what's ultimately going to make the price corrections.
I understand. And the problematic part is due to the severe adjustments that we're making right now. Like I said before, we're kind of being reconditioned right now. And so it's a matter of kind of like when that demand comes back, is it going to be what it was before, right? And I think that's kind of something I've been wondering. I think in a lot of industries we'll see a surge in demand, and in some cases more than what was there before.
Mm-hmm. And
then in other cases, I'm wondering, when demand comes back, what will that new normal look like?
Yeah, I think investors will want to put their money to work. If you look at real estate over the last 10 years, the prices have gone up quite dramatically, and I don't have any reason to expect why that wouldn't be the case after the dust settles here. So I think after a year or two, people will start to regain confidence. Banks will want to start lending money again, and people are going to want to put their money to work, and it's just going to take some time.
Yeah. Another question I have for you is, and I know I said we would go till 1:30. We're a little bit over, but
that's okay.
I just have to soak up all your knowledge, Royce. I don't get to talk to you that much.
Right.
But this is something that's impacted your business significantly, and it's the co-working spaces, right? And that's an industry, not just from a real estate perspective, but just an industry that I'm now questioning the validity of. And it's an industry that really exploded in the past 4 years, and became like very trendy, and became almost kind of like cliche-esque. It became like kind of like a cool thing to do, to say you work at a co-working space, because I'm just like super artistic. And so now and a lot of those people can easily take advantage of not having the overhead of paying rent to a co-working space, because they can work in their studio apartments or whatever. They have the flexibility, right? So Um, Curious what you think about that, because that has significantly impacted the office
Yeah, for sure.
commercial
Yeah,
business.
it's gonna, I think time will tell to see if that business model works or not, if it's gonna make it through the recession, because like you said, there's a lot, most of the people who are using those spaces are independent contractors who could work from home if they had to. It's a nice amenity for sure to have a $30 square foot office space with people who make coffee for you and your own receptionist. But during hard times, I would argue that most entrepreneurs aren't going to want to pay for that. And it's going to be interesting to see what that does to the co-working space's bottom line. I'm not sure if they're going to be able to continue to pay their rent.
Yeah, I just don't really see that. And I did I actually did a consulting project for a co-working space last year. And what was really interesting was just the sheer growth. And it wasn't necessarily growth in terms of revenue and like memberships. It was just growth in supply. Like the supply just multiplied year after year after year. And last year there were over 20,000 locations in the United States, and it was projected based on what was in development that there would be 43 by the end of 2020.
Wow.
43,000. It was insane. And so now, but there wasn't nearly that much demand. And where it was coming from, it wasn't coming from like the big brands like the WeWorks and whatever. It was coming up from all these local places that have like, they have a direct connection with their immediate community, because
Mm-hmm.
that's what people were valuing more. It was more the photographer. They were catering to people like photographers and event planners and types of freelancer type roles like that.
Mm-hmm.
But now I'm like, well, a lot of those businesses would be deemed non-essential, and I almost guarantee have seen a significant decline in demand. And so those people are probably checking out, right? They're probably like, you know what, I can't deal with this. So it's a fascinating thing. I think that's one thing that I'll definitely be watching on the other
Yeah.
side of this is what
Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see. I think we're all wondering that in commercial
happens.
real estate, if that's going to make it or not.
And it's so much real estate. That's the crazy,
Yeah.
it's kind of like, I
Pretty
think,
much every single nice, fancy Class A office building now has one of those WeWorks or co-working type tenants, and
right. They
that's
lease
gonna
out to them.
that's
Yeah.
and generally they're taking up an entire floor of space. So if
Yeah.
if they can't make it, that's gonna fall on the hands of the landlord too. They're gonna feel it just
Absolutely.
as badly because they're not
Absolutely.
gonna collect any revenue.
Now, the other thing. So I used to work for a retailer for Target, and we've been talking about the the we've been talking about what's going to happen with malls, like mall traffic, and I think this is the death sentence now.
Yep. Yep.
It's over. Like, there's no way malls are going to rebound from this,
Yep.
right? And it's kind of it's been a slow, painful death anyway, because I know they've been putting fitness centers in malls to drive traffic, and they've been putting like little casinos in that, and like just like things to like get some more traffic in the mall, some more need-based traffic instead of discretionary, um, and like grocery stores and all that stuff. And now it's just over. So there's all these big plots of real estate. Like, what happens?
Yeah, it's going to be a lot of space to fill, that's for sure. I think the most successful malls will be the ones who can incorporate a mixture of different things. You'll start to see. I noticed. I work right across from the Ridgedale Mall,
Mm,
and they're putting more entertainment-driven concepts in there, things that are unique and not necessarily long term either. And I think we're going to start to see more. So a lot of times you would see like a small junior box building on an outlot of the mall. And I think you'll start to see a lot of those get converted into apartment buildings, because then you have the demand that's right there. They can just walk across the street, go in, do their shopping, and then go back home. It's a convenience factor. And I think you'll start to, a lot of malls will start to incorporate a residential aspect of it as well.
Got it. Got it. And do you know, so I saw, I think in the news, which I stopped watching, but I saw like there were like dorms being evacuated on the U of M campus and things like that. So multi-family housing,
Yep.
you know, do you see anything happening in that? And I know that's not your space, but I'm assuming that you do have some insight on that.
Yeah, I think multifamily is going to be pretty strong still. It's been kind of the golden child of commercial real estate, but from as far as an investment perspective goes, I mean, it's just the demand here in the Twin Cities is crazy, and the vacancy levels before COVID were like 3-4% across the board. So I don't see that industry getting impacted as badly as retail, hospitality.
Oh my gosh. I mean, I'd love to see Airbnb's numbers. I would love to see. I
Yeah,
mean,
hotels are just getting hammered right now. It's
hammered.
they're going to be one of the tougher asset classes to bounce back. I think that's going to be a 3 to 5 year crawl out of the hole, to be honest.
Absolutely. Because I mean, I think what, like, you know, I don't mean to be pessimistic about this at all, but you know, it's going to take a lot. It's going to take a lot for us to, you know, even when we are able to socialize again, you know, it's going to take a while to adjust back into that. And I mean, unless there is a vaccine and a treatment plan for this, you know, we're not going to. We're even if they say that we can, we're not going to be able to do it confidently, and so that travel and leisure is a stretch. You know, I mean, just being able, like, I'd love to go out for a drink with you, but even that is going to be, if that's going to be challenging to do confidently, I'm not getting on a plane and
booking a hotel for $300.
No, or staying in an Airbnb that was just vacated and turned over an hour before I got there. I can't feel good about that. And so so I think this will just be really, really interesting. Like the hospitality industry. Oh my gosh, I know someone that does what I do, and they focus on, they only work with hotels, and they lost all of their clients. Which,
well, almost all like the Hiltons, the Marriotts, they're furloughing their employees right now. There is no demand whatsoever, because most of during the week, all of their clientele is event related. So there'll be a big event in town, a concert or something, or a business meeting. There's no business meetings to be had right now. There's no bands playing music. Sporting events are shut down. There's just no demand for it whatsoever.
I was just talking with some past coworkers from Target. We did a Zoom call. This is great, by the way. I love what this is doing. I've got a high school Zoom reunion tonight.
Oh, nice.
I've got a college Zoom reunion tomorrow.
Yeah, I've
Um,
talked to more people in the last month than I definitely would have if we didn't have COVID. I mean, that's one benefit. I've talked to a lot of high school friends I never would have talked to, a
yeah,
lot of college buddies. Yeah.
yeah, it's I think it's great. And I'm kind of leading the charge because I'm kind of like that. And but like it's fantastic. I mean, I think that this has given me an opportunity to to not take things for granted so much, and to kind of I'm busier than I was before, and I felt like I was plenty busy before, um but now it's kind of like, well, now I have a reason to reach out to people that I know, and they have a reason to not say no. um
Yeah.
so it's funny, it's even when you reach out to people, it's met with very little resistance now. Everyone's like, yeah, let's do it. And I think it's kind of the hidden gem of what COVID has given us, I think.
Yeah. I've even noticed it. I do a lot of cold calling for my business and reaching out to different business owners, seeing how they're doing, if they have any needs to expand or relocate, things like that. And my conversations in the last month have been like 3 times as long. A lot of people aren't in the office right now, but when I do get someone who's in the office, they're almost always by themselves. They haven't talked to anyone in weeks. And I would say the average length of my calls has been like a half hour
Oh,
per
wow.
call. Yeah. So
Wow.
that's one of the nice things is they're a lot more receptive to talking to me right now.
Yeah, I mean, I love it. I feel like I don't have any qualms about being chatty Cathy right now.
Yeah.
Uh, and it's kind of it's really unfortunate that it had to happen this way with a pandemic, but it's one of those things that sort of ties us all together, and we're all going through the same exact thing. We're all worried about the same things. Maybe some people have a higher magnitude of that worry than others, depending on how you're set up, either in business or in life or whatever. But we're now at this point where no one's immune to this thing.
Yeah. There's a sense of unity. We're all in this together.
100%,
Yeah.
100%. And I think that's great, considering all of the things that existed before this that divided us. And that was not the purpose of this talk, but since I know you, I feel like we just get a little carried away, and you've called me out for how much I talk anyway. So
Not in a negative way.
um, and so I was thinking about big companies, having worked for Target. Target has a big headquarters at 10th and Nicollet, and then they also have a big building at City Center on 6th Street downtown, and then they've got a big office at Brooklyn Park. And then outside of that, they've got over 30 distribution centers in addition to their 1,800 stores nationwide. I mean, obviously, Target stores are essential. The distribution network is absolutely essential, and for their e-commerce supply chain. But when you look at their centralized operations here in the Twin Cities area, that's where some people, that work there were saying, we actually think that we're probably going to lose a couple of office buildings due to, deciding that, hey, these people can be remote. And for large team gatherings, we'll rent out, an auditorium at the convention center or whatever, right? There's so many options to get away with not having that overhead and increasing the efficiency of the team. And
Yeah, and I think what you'll also see too is a lot of these bigger companies who've had to lay employees off, who own property. One very common strategy a lot of businesses use in recessions like this is doing what's called a sale leaseback,
mhm.
where they will continue to operate out of their building, but they'll sell their real estate to an investor, and then they'll lease it back on a long-term lease, like a 10, 15-year lease. So they're still able to maintain their operations just as they normally would, but they can use the equity that was in their building, pull that out, and inject that right into their business. So they can hire more employees back. They can use it to buy that equipment they need, just as an overall means to boost capital in their business versus their real estate.
So that's a good option to take if you're not worried about going out of business, right?
Right.
If you know that you've got some sustainability in your business and the need for your business is fairly macro proof, right?
Yeah.
So that's good to know, that that's an option. It's basically like you're basically buying more time.
Yep.
So that you can invest in the right things now and not have your overhead take over, right?
Right.
Now, a funny, and I know you've dealt with some retail properties too. And in fact, didn't you just close on a Goodwill, like a big?
Yeah, we closed on a Goodwill. It was a really interesting property. It had a Goodwill. It was in Roseville, right on Cleveland Avenue, off 35W. So Goodwill was the anchor tenant, and then it had an industrial building attached to it. It had 7 other tenants in the building.
So have you been following anything going on with Dick's Sporting Goods?
A little bit. I can't say I know everything about them though.
So, I just think it's so interesting how businesses making bad decisions, the ripple effect of that. So now Dick's Sporting Goods has closed all of their stores. And it's just so fascinating to me from not just a marketing perspective, but just from a business perspective, like common sense. So on March 26th, there was, I'm on their email list, and I got an email that said it was promoting some kind of sale on team sports equipment. Team sports. This is at the same time that the NFL is talking about delaying the start of the season.
Yeah. Right.
And Dick's Sporting Goods, a national retailer that everyone knows, is promoting team sports equipment. I mean, that is just so incredibly tone deaf.
Yeah, just oblivious.
And of course, it was probably some marketing campaign that was planned months ago, that they didn't have the due diligence to sort of say, hey, is what we're doing relevant?
Yeah.
Still? When this happened, they weren't adaptable, they weren't agile to the changes going on in the environment around them. But it's just interesting that, home fitness is huge right now.
It's just booming right now. Yeah. I've been doing workout videos in my living room for the last month. Yeah.
It's just exploded. So you would think that they would have exploited that opportunity. You would think, equipment, apparel, and even if they got into the online training game, it's really not difficult with a little bit of technology, which a company like Dick's Sporting Goods should have the resources to be able to do that. So I'm just baffled by the fact that a retailer of that size has closed their doors in within a month of this pandemic really hitting critical mass.
Yeah, I think the businesses who can adapt and roll with the punches and adapt to this new business cycle they're gonna be the ones that survive. The ones who can't, are gonna close their doors.
It's the mass retailers, what they're like, the general merchandise places, Walmart and Target, and then, I don't even, are there any other ones anymore? I don't even know.
Those are the
Costco.
only ones in Minnesota, at least, it seems like.
Yeah. Yeah, our last Kmart closed about 2 months ago, I think.
Yeah.
The one on Lake Street.
Yeah.
Are you selling that property? I'm kidding.
No, I wish.
But one of the things that they struggle with the most is the profitability mix, the margin mix, because they've got discretionary, well, actually not all discretionary goods are profitable, but particularly, soft textiles, apparel, home, you know, I guess you call it style categories, I guess, or whatnot. But then you've got low margin in commodities and grocery. But the demand, like the mix of sales, like it has to be at a certain level for the company to be at a high, high level of profit. But the demand for necessities has increased, where, they're making, 10 cents they make 10 cents on like a tube of toothpaste. But they make, $5 on a t-shirt, right? So, but no one's buying t-shirts. So they're seeing their sales go through the roof, but their profitability is tanking right now, right? And so that's changed. It's just changed a lot of like what the rest of the year is going to look like, because even for those necessities, it's somewhat of a front load. The sales are just basically being front loaded because people are stocking up, hoarding,
Right.
and
Yeah.
they need it later, right?
Right.
So, but at the same time, I don't know about you, but I'm cooking a lot more at home.
Sure.
So I'm spending more on grocery than I am on eating out, or
Sure. Yeah. I've
uh,
noticed that too. I've probably saved money in all of this. I mean, I
100%.
think my income level is going to change because there's just not going to be as many transactions this year. But the nice piece is I haven't been spending as much.
Oh, absolutely. I'm like, I can't remember the last time I pulled out like my credit card or debit card. I don't remember. It's insane. I think I paid my internet bill yesterday.
Sure.
So I pulled out
I
my.
would say the amount of alcohol I've consumed has gone up, though. I see that seems to be the norm.
Tell me about it. I was and I'm actually like, I've never done this before, but I'm looking for deals on booze right now.
Yeah.
Like I was at the store and I was like, I love Jameson, and I'm like, oh yeah, but then I saw like Windsor Canadian whiskey was like half the price, and I was like, ooh.
That's funny.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, Royce, thank you so much for taking time with me today. I really appreciate it. Thanks so much.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Thanks so much for your insights. I would love to do this again.
Sure.
Maybe in a few weeks as more things continue to evolve and change.
Yeah, things are changing daily, so be
And
happy to come on again.
and your knowledge and advice is so it's just so invaluable for everyone in the group, especially for those that are tenants or own their property. And so I'd like to bring you back on to share some insights and advice. And for anyone watching, either right now this live stream or later, can people message you if
Sure.
they have any
Yeah,
questions?
absolutely.
Feel free to message Royce. I'll drop his phone number so you can text him. No, I'm kidding.
That's fine. I'm an open book.
Yeah, and then I'll drop your email address though down here.
Okay, perfect.
So that people can get in touch with you. So thanks so much for being with me today. I appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
All
Take
right,
care.
thanks, buddy. Take care of yourself.